Hello, everyone. My name is Don, the movie reviewer, and today we're going to be doing a spoiler review on Mother by Darren Aronofsky, one of my favorite directors, probably in my top five. So, Mother, let's get into it. I went to the theater with low expectations, and that's how I go into most movies. I go in with really low expectations. I'm not expecting anything great or grandiose because I'm usually disappointed when I think that way. I go into the theater and I'm like, my expectations are through the roof, and then I go and sit down, watch it, and I leave highly disappointed. So every movie I go into now, I go in with low expectations. I don't read any reviews because it clouds my better judgment, and so I just go in fresh, not knowing nothing, watching one trailer if I'm really intrigued. If I'm not really intrigued, then I watch like multiple trailers. But for this, I watched the first trailer, which was just Jennifer Lawrence walking around the house and you hearing narration in the background with people yelling and screaming, and I was like, Darren Aronofsky, Jennifer Lawrence, interesting trailer, not giving away the story. Fantastic trailer. More trailers need to be like the first trailer for Mother. Definitely. Not spoiling anything. So I was excited for it. Went to the theater, watched it. And man, oh man, this is one of the best movies of the year. Here's my experience with it. I sat down in the theater, I watched it. And when it first started, it's like, okay, you got Javier Bardem's character putting this crystal on this thing. He puts this crystal on this thing and this house comes back to life. Very cool. But then when it started, though, it started with a woman being burned or something. You see her face and you see the close-up of the fire and all that stuff. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, this is really bad CGI. I don't like this. Then you see the house come back to life. I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. It's artsy. So then, you see Jennifer Lawrence come up from the ashes. I'm like, oh, it's pretty cool. It's cool. And she turns around, baby. And I'm like, okay. And then she starts walking around the house. Now, this is a really weird scene for me when Jennifer Lawrence is walking around the house because, A, she's walking in circles. Like she hears a noise or something and she walks into the kitchen and then she walks back to where she came from and to the front door. And I'm like, did you really need to walk around just to go to the front door? You could just walk in a straight line. But anyway, she goes to the door. She opens the door. Nothing out there. You see a bunch of grass in the house. Okay, fine. Then all of a sudden, there's your first jump scare in the movie, which I hated because I thought this was going to be a horror movie. Javier Bardem pops out, and I'm like, okay, this is a jump scare. I don't like that. That's cheap and that's lazy. Come on, Darren, you can do better than this. So I hate this. I really didn't like this movie at first. Like, it's really slow. There's a jump scare at first. The CGI is pretty bad. Okay, I'm not really that into this. I might not end up enjoying this at the end of it all. So you got your first jump scare. They're kissing. He's like, I smell, and he takes showers. She's like, I like it, and that's okay. It's cute. Then he leaves, and then, he's a writer. He can't come up with anything to write. And then when he leaves the room, there's a knock on the door. Javier Bardem goes to look to see who's at the door. Jennifer Lawrence, you see eye contact with Javier Bardem's piece of paper where she's like, I really want him to write his story. I'm obsessed with that. Like, oh, you need to go back to work. But then he goes to the door. Ed Harris shows up. Ed Harris, one of my favorite actors. Love Ed Harris. He's great. He shows up and, he's like, oh, I thought this was a bed and breakfast and all this. And so this movie puts you in Jennifer Lawrence's perspective of what's going on because you're looking at it from her view like, who is this guy? Oh, I thought this was a bed and breakfast. Okay. Then, Javier Bardem's like, oh, go get us a drink. And then she gets them a drink. And then she has like this panic attack or something. The movie doesn't really explain it, but she has like a panic attack. She's holding her chest and it's her heart she's holding. And so it's like, I think there are moments throughout the movie where she has these panic attacks where she's holding her heart, and we'll get to that. But she has her first panic attack. She drops the glass. Javier Bardem's like, are you okay? She's like, I'm fine. Then she brings them a drink, and then they're drinking a little liquor from a flask that Ed Harris has. And now at that point, I was like, oh, he put something in her drink. Or he wants to put something in her drink. He's like, hey, you want a swig of this? And then it's like, no. Probably just put something in there that's probably going to poison her or make her unconscious or something. Because I'm thinking, okay, this is just a straightforward movie. It's going to be like Rosemary's Baby or something like that, where Javier Bardem's a part of a cult or something, and Ed Harris, they're acting like they don't know each other, and they're going to set something up, just like in Rosemary's Baby with those two weird characters that just showed up and they wouldn't leave. And I thought this was similar to that. That's where I thought this was going. So then you fast forward a little bit, and then there's a scene where Ed Harris and Javier Bardem, they go to Javier Bardem's office where he works, and this part of the movie is very vague because the movie, I don't think it explains exactly what Javier Bardem writes about. Like, I know most people will who've reviewed this movie say, oh yeah, he's a poet or something like that, but they don't really explain what kind of stuff he writes. Like, he's just an author. So then you see Ed Harris like idolizing this guy, like, oh, I'm such a huge fan of your work and whatever, and they don't specify what he writes about. Maybe it's, when I thought about this movie, I was thinking, okay, this guy's an author, so he's a creator. So everything that's happening in the movie is from his perspective as a writer. This is a story that's being told from his writing. That's how you can look at it. And so, he's like, I admire your work. I'm a huge fan of yours. And then Jennifer Lawrence, she's just like keeping an eye on him, wondering what's going on. And then you're in her position where you're just like, yeah, I don't know. And you're like, yeah, I don't know this guy. There's something weird going on here. We need, there's some shroud of mystery. So at that point, that's when it got me intrigued. Like the first few moments, with the jump scare and with the pretty bad looking CGI, I was just like, yeah, I don't know about this. But then, it started getting good once Ed Harris showed up, and then they added all this mystery. Because then there's this scene where you look at this crystal where Ed Harris, he's about to go for the crystal. And he's like, oh, what is that? And he's fascinated by it. And Javier Bardem's like, no, don't touch that. This is something that was in a fire. So then when you references that, you think about the beginning of the movie and you're like, I saw a woman on fire and the house was all covered in like black stuff and smoke and ash, and he put the crystal on there and the house came back to life. And he's like, she breathed life back into every room. And it's like, okay, there's something going on here with that thing. And realistically, you're thinking, oh yeah, he was probably married once before, something went wrong, and the house burned down that he was in. And then he found this crystal, because that's what he says. He's like, I found this crystal in the ashes, and then I found her, and this gave me the strength to write again. So realistically, you're just like, oh yeah, guy was with someone else, they died, house burnt down, he was depressed, he found this crystal, it gave him the energy and the strength to write again. Then he met Jennifer Lawrence, who is an attractive woman in this movie, and he's with her, and he's old and she's young, and it's like, cool, he's happy again, he's writing, and everything's good. So realistically, you think it's like, oh, everything's fine, but there's something weird going on here with that, but you don't know quite what it is yet. So then he's like, yeah, don't touch this crystal. So then he puts it back on the little thing that he has, a little stuff where he's like, yeah, do not touch this. Now, from what I understand, what most people are telling me, and I think this is a perfect representation of that, where it's like they say, okay, in the Garden of Eden, you had Adam and Eve, and it's like that crystal represents the fruit, where it's like, you're not supposed to touch this. You are not supposed to eat of the fruit, or you will be exposed to all the bad things as well. And so that's what that represents, from what I understand, and that makes sense. And then there's some really weird stuff going on. It's like, okay, Ed Harris is just continuously coughing. He's coughing and coughing, and you're like, okay, he's saying, oh, it's just a drink and it's just really stiff and I can't handle it. But then you're thinking he's coughing so much that there's something wrong with him. But you're not quite sure what it is. And so then it's like, all right, there's more mystery. Now I'm really getting interested. The first like maybe 15 minutes or so, I was like, I'm not into this. And then after that, you got Ed Harris and all this mystery with the crystal and why he's here and why he's coughing. It's like, okay, tension is starting to build a little bit here. It's getting interesting. So then there's a scene where Jennifer Lawrence goes to the bathroom, and then she sees Ed Harris and Javier Bardem, and he's like puking up or whatever. And then she looks at his rib cage, and there's like a scar on it or something. And then Javier Bardem immediately covers it up before Jennifer Lawrence can ask him what it is. And then Javier Bardem's like, oh, give us some privacy. So she leaves the bathroom. And for a while there, even though I saw this movie twice, I was confused about what that was. Like, okay, he has a scar on him. And you move along, and then you got Michelle Pfeiffer who shows up. But before that, you got another jump scare in this movie, which really irritated me. Because then, Jennifer Lawrence, she's making breakfast in the kitchen. And, a lot of people want to say, oh, Jennifer Lawrence's performance in this movie is very, like, hammy and it's staged. And it's like, I feel like that was the direction Darren Aronofsky gave her. And her performance is really good. And I know I've seen a lot of reviews and a lot of people are saying, oh, yeah, she could be up for an Academy Award because of this. And I agree with that after thinking about her performance in the movie for so long. She really did give a really good performance. Like all her emotions, all the expressions on her face were really good. Her body language was good. Just the subtle things she would do with her eyes and stuff she would look at, like, the notepad where he was writing, and you could tell she was obsessed with him writing and wanting him to write again. So all that stuff was good. Her performance was stellar. Everyone's performance in this movie is absolutely stellar. Everyone's their own character. They behave in their own way with their mannerisms and their actions. Ed Harris, Javier Bardem, everybody, and then Michelle Pfeiffer. She pops up. But before that, you got a jump scare. Ed Harris is behind the fridge or whatever, and she's in the fridge looking, and then she shuts it, and then he pops out of nowhere, and I'm like, come on, man, get rid of this jump scare crap. If this is a horror movie, which I don't think it really is, I mean, it's a nightmarish movie about reality, but it's not like a straightforward horror movie or anything, but you got these jump scares in here, which really annoyed me. So he's like, oh, I'm just here for a cigarette, and it's like, dude, come on, man, you didn't need to do all that. You could have just walked around and been like, oh, I'm gonna light my cigarette. You don't need to stand there and wait for her to shut the door and you pop out and I'm like, I'm just gonna light my cigarette. Some stupid crap. But it's like, he lights a cigarette and then he smokes outside. Now he's better now. He's not coughing, hacking anymore, and it's a little weird. And then you look at it from Jennifer Lawrence's mother's perspective, like, okay, he's fine now. Okay, he's hawking, cacking up, choking all night. Maybe it was just a drink, but there was some weird stuff going on and you don't know what happened, but he's fine now, which is a little weird. Someone knocks at the door. It's Michelle Pfeiffer. She shows up. She is really, really mean in this movie. Like, her character is just like an absolute bitch. She's just really nasty, just really mean to Jennifer Lawrence's character, telling her all the things that she should do and all this, just being really nasty, getting in all her business and everything. And so it's like, you just got these two people at first, and then Michelle Pfeiffer shows up. And from what I understand, okay, you go back to Ed Harris with the rib thing and he's in the bathroom. From what I understand is that it goes back to Adam and Eve, where it's like, okay, woman came from man. God took the man's rib and created woman with it. So you look at the bathroom scene with Ed Harris's character, where he has that scar on his rib cage. It's like, okay, Michelle Pfeiffer shows up. She came from him. And when you look at this house and you look at the surroundings of it, all that exists in this world of the movie is this house and this grass. So from what I understand, since Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Earth herself, this house represents the planet, and the outside area represents the universe that they're in, because there are no cars there. There's no other houses. There's no animals. There's nothing. It's just the house and the grass, and that's it. And then there are also scenes in the movie. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is where you really understand how Jennifer Lawrence feels, is when she's painting the wall. And then she has this paint or whatever, this powder stuff, and she puts it in there, and then she puts a chunk of it on the wall, and she looks at it, and she's like, that's not quite right. She doesn't say that. It's subtle things where she just looks at it, and you look at her eyes and her facial expression, and you're like, she feels that that's not quite right. So then she puts her hands on the house, on the wall, and she feels the house living. It has a heartbeat. She's one with the house. So that means she's Mother Earth. She's one with the world, which is the house. So she feels the heartbeat and it's beating. She puts another set of powder paint in there, and then she sprinkles slabs another dab of paint on there. She looks at it, and then she exhales. And that's perfect acting, because she doesn't say anything, which is great. I don't like things being told to me. I like to figure stuff out on my own. So she just looks at it, and her expression on her face is now she's happy. And she exhales deeply, and then she has this really good smile on her face, like, that's perfect. That's the shade that I want. So it's great. So she's one with this house. The house is her. They're connected in some way. And so you're thinking everything's just normal, but really, no, the house represents Earth. She's Mother Nature. She's a part of the house. So then it's like, all right, Michelle Pfeiffer shows up. Now you got Ed Harris. So then you go back to the scene where she's cooking breakfast. The breakfast is burning because she neglected it. She goes back to check on it, and it burns. She doesn't touch it. Michelle Pfeiffer comes in. Jennifer Lawrence says no. Michelle Pfeiffer touches it. She drops it on the floor. Jennifer Lawrence cleans it up. And then I can't remember what happens. So you fast forward a little bit, and then it's like, okay, Jennifer Lawrence, she's going back to painting the walls. And then Michelle Pfeiffer comes into the room with some drinks, and she's like, oh, I got lemonade. And I'm thinking, okay, the lemonade is spiked because Michelle Pfeiffer's acting a little like, intoxicated, but you don't know because she doesn't specify. She's just like, oh, it's old family recipe. And then You're like, okay, and Jennifer Lawrence, you're looking at her from her perspective, like, I don't know. For me, anyway, I was looking at, I don't know what you did to that drink. You could have put something in there. Because the whole time I'm thinking, okay, why is Ed Harris here? Why is Michelle Pfeiffer here? Why is Javier Bardem? He doesn't know them, but he's being just super nice to them in a weird way. Like, yeah, you can be nice to people and let them into your home, but absolute strangers you know nothing about, that's just bizarre. So I'm thinking they're all lying to her. They're all lying to Jennifer Lawrence, and they're going to do something to her at the end of the movie where they're a part of a cult or something. That's the first thing I thought of. So I'm like, don't drink that drink. She put something in it. But then it's just normal. She takes a little sip of it, and then she's like, oh yeah, there is alcohol in this because you got Michelle Pfeiffer just acting like, oh, I'm chilled out, I'm relaxed, I'm having a good drink, lemonade that's spiked, I'm having a good time. And then Michelle Pfeiffer just keeps getting into Jennifer Lawrence's business, asking her all these questions about her personal life, and you need to have a baby. And there's one line in the movie that I really enjoyed from Michelle Pfeiffer where she's talking about the earth and the house, where it's like, okay, why are you repainting this house? Why don't you just tear it down and build a new one? So when you think about that to the end of the movie where you got Javier Bardem, he keeps doing this in a continuous cycle with a different woman or a different form of a woman with the same heart. And he puts his heart on this thing where it revitalizes the house and brings it back to life, and he just continues this cycle over and over and over again until he gets it right, I guess. And it's just like, well, since your original creation is not working out, why don't you just destroy the creation and start from scratch with something new instead of continuing and repeating the same thing? So I thought what Michelle Pfeiffer said in that scene really illustrated what Javier Bardem should do, or what they should do with this house instead of doing what they're currently doing. So I thought that was good. It's a nice little touch in there, I think. So then, Javier Bardem and Harris, they go for a hike. And then Michelle Pfeiffer and Jennifer Lawrence go to the basement, and they're still talking about babies. And Lawrence is just like, I would say Jennifer Lawrence's character, at first in this movie, she's just listening to Javier Bardem saying, okay, yeah, I'll trust you with these people. I don't know about them. And then we got Michelle Pfeiffer all up in her business. And it's just like uncomfortable. Like for me, I don't like people asking me questions about my personal life or my personal business, if I don't know them and I don't want to answer the question, and they're really pushy about it, especially her. And so it's kind of uncomfortable. And it does, like I said, it does feel like a home invasion. People just invading your personal space. And so it's like they got that scene, and Jennifer Lawrence is, she's thinking. And then fast forward a little bit, and then you got Michelle Pfeiffer wanting to look at the forbidden fruit, which is the crystal. Now she's obsessed with it and she wants to know what it is. And Jennifer Lawrence is like really obsessed with like, do not go in that room. You need to stay out of that room. That's his personal study work area. Don't go in there. Stay out of there. And Michelle Pfeiffer's just being a hardhead and just is like not listening. And she keeps trying to go in there. And Jennifer Lawrence is like, no, do not go in this room. So then you got Javier Bardem and Ed Harris, and they come back. And then Jennifer Lawrence is like, okay, I'm kind of fed up with this. And so she talks to Javier Bardem privately while Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer walk away and go somewhere off screen. And then she's talking about, I can't remember what she says, but she's talking to Javier Bardem. And then Javier Bardem reveals that, oh yeah, the guy, he's a fan of my work. Yeah, he lied to us about this being a bed and breakfast, but he says he's dying from cancer, which explains why he's been hacking up all night. And he's dying from cancer, and he wants to meet me before he dies and all this stuff. And he's a very honorable man. And, so you're like, all right, nah, I guess that's the case. And then you hear a smash. You hear something smash. And at that point, as soon as I heard that smash, I already knew that crystal was broken. I already knew it because they've been pointing at it so much in the movie. Ed Harris has been obsessed with it. Michelle Pfeiffer's been obsessed with it. They kept pointing it out. I was like, yep, that's what's broken. Now they got hell to pay. So then Javier Bardem runs upstairs and they check it out. And sure enough, the crystal is broken. Javier Bardem freaks out. And at that moment, I did feel bad for Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer in that scene. Because Ed Harris, man, he's a fantastic actor, man. In this scene alone, he's great because you see the look on his face where he feels really kind of not disgusted with himself, but he feels like really sad about what he did. he's like, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to, you told me the story about it, and it's really fascinating to me, and I wanted my wife to see it, and I'm so sorry. I just really wanted to know. I just really wanted to show my wife and stuff. So Ed Harris' performance in that scene alone was fantastic. And Harvey Bardem's freaking out, because it means a lot to him. So he tells them to leave. Now, at this moment, this is where stuff starts to get really, really weird. So you got okay, the forbidden fruit, which has been eaten. Whereas in Adam and Eve, they eat the apple and then they see all bad things, and that's when bad things start to happen. They see everything. So that's what happens in this. They're pretty subtle, calm, cool at first. Michelle Pfeiffer's a bit of a bitch, but everything's not really, too weird at this point until that crystal breaks. So when crystal breaks, they touch the forbidden fruit. And then Jennifer Lawrence is like, okay, I'm going to kick them out of this house. And then she goes and looks at them, and then Ed Harris is like, really, really sorry. But Michelle Pfeiffer is like, oh, just get over it. It's no big deal. So then they disappear, and I'm wondering, and realistically, I was like, okay, if this were my house, I would have been really aggressive with them. I would have been like, listen, I told you not to go in there multiple times. Even my husband told you not to go in there, and you still broke the rules. You need to leave. I would have grabbed them by their arm, or I would have called the police immediately and said, there's some strangers in here. They need to leave. They're not leaving. So I was wondering why she wasn't freaking out like that. And I thought she was too tamed in the movie, where it's like, yeah, she would have a problem with something, but she would never really confront it until like she reached her breaking point, which is interesting. So it's like she didn't really get aggressive and tell them like, you really need to leave. She's like, you need to leave. They didn't listen. They disappear. So then she goes to check on them in the bedroom, and they're like having sex and making out in her house. And I'm like, at that point, yeah, it's time for you to go. I would have yelled and screamed and said, listen, you need to get the fuck out of here. You got to go. This is unacceptable. But she didn't do that. She just kind of had another panic attack with her heart. And I think each time she has these panic attacks, it has to deal with these people who enter her world, which is the earth, her house. Every time people enter her world and affect it in a way to where she doesn't see fit, to where it's like she wants it to be paradise. She wants it to be perfect the way she wants it to be with her and him. And these people come in and wreck everything. And I feel like once people come in and start wrecking everything, that's when she starts to have her panic attacks. So then she drinks this potion, where it's very mystical in the movie. I'm like, I'm wondering what that is. It's like, so she has, the first time she has a panic attack, she doesn't take it. But the second time she does, she goes in the bathroom, I think, and pours a little water in a glass, and then pours this powder. And I didn't really quite know what it was. I thought it was medicine. When you think at it from a realistic standpoint, it's like, it's some medicine that she's supposed to take because she has these panic attacks and she needs to calm herself down. But then when I thought about it, you look back at the scene with the powder and the paint when she was painting the wall. I think that's what she was drinking. I think she was drinking the paint powder stuff that she put on the wall. Now that makes sense from this standpoint because, like I said, the house represents planet Earth. She is one with the house. She is the house's guardian. She is its protector. And you have these strangers who come in here, first Adam and Eve, Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer, who come in and wreck everything. You have these people coming in disrespecting her planet. It hurts her heart and it affects her emotionally. So that's why she starts to have those panic attacks every time someone is corrupting the world that she lives in. It hurts her heart. So then she drinks this powder, which is the paint that she uses to paint the house with. She drinks it to be one with the house again, to calm herself down, which is what I think that is. Because I'm thinking that's the powder paint that she uses to paint the house with, and she drinks the house, she drinks the earth to be one with it again, to calm her heart and ease her heart, since all these people are being destructive with it. So then you fast forward a little bit, and you got Javier Bardem freaking out like, oh, I'm going to board her up this door. I'm not letting them in here anymore. They can't be back in here. And then, she's still not kicking him out, which is weird. And then, she's talking to him, and then you got Ed Harris saying, oh, yeah, we're sorry and whatnot. Then all of a sudden, these two boys show up. These two kids show up. Actually, one boy shows up, and argues with Jennifer Lawrence about where's my dad, all this stuff. So I'm like, what's going on here? Then the other boy shows up, and these two kids are arguing to their dad about his will or something. So now I'm like, okay, maybe this movie isn't a cult movie. Maybe Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer aren't working with Javier Bardem. This is just a straightforward story about a man who's dying, and his last dying wish is to see his the greatest author in the world, and he wants to see this guy. He knew he couldn't just go there outright and be like, "Oh, I'm coming to your secluded home to see you." So he had to lie a little bit to ease his way in, and then went for a hike and he revealed the truth. So that's when I was like, "Okay, this is just a straightforward story. That's cool. There's a twist. This isn't a cult movie where these people are in on it mysteriously and they're going to gag her up and poison her drink and do something to Jennifer Lawrence." No, this is a straightforward movie about a guy who has a dying wish. Now his kids show up and they are like, "Oh, Dad, you're giving him more money than me and all this stuff," and they're jealous of each other. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just like a family drama going on here, so this is normal. So that's why I'm thinking this movie is going in a different direction. But then once you think everything is calm and normal, all of a sudden, that's when the weird shit happens again, because then these two brothers are arguing to the point of where one brother kills the other brother. He beats him over the head with a doorknob or something. And I'm just like, holy shit. I'm sitting in my seat. I'm like, holy shit, that is super extreme. I don't even know these two guys, but they're arguing over money. And when you really think about it, there's a lot of greed in the world. There are a lot of people who are so obsessed over money. Like, you got people who rob banks. You got people who steal money from their parents. You got people who will kill somebody over some money, steal an old lady's purse, so it's like they say money's the root of all evil or whatever and stuff. And so it's like it's a perfect representation of this, where it's like you got these two brothers who we don't know anything about them, but we see them right away, to where it's like one's jealous of the other one over some money and their father's will, and the father, he's dying, he's trying to calm them down. So at this moment I felt sympathy for Ed Harris's character. And I was just like, yeah, man, this is totally wrong. You got your two kids fighting over something that is completely petty. It's just ridiculous. And then the one brother's so obsessed with it that he just immediately kills him out of his emotion of anger and rage and jealousy. And so he kills him. And so a lot of people pointed out to me where it's like, this represents Cain and Abel in the Bible. I don't know much about the Bible, but from what I understand, I think Cain and Abel were brothers. I'm not entirely sure. But then one brother killed the other brother over something. I don't know exactly what it was, but in this, that's what this represents. And so it's like one brother kills the other one over money. And so that brother is dead. And then as that brother is dying, he runs into this room and he falls on the ground. There's a pool of blood there. And then you got Jennifer Lawrence coming in trying to help him. And then the brother who killed the other brother is like, "Oh, man, I'm sorry for what I did. Oh, I'm panicking." And Javier Bardem finally takes charge, to where he wasn't even focused on what these guys are doing, but he finally takes charge and he's like, "All right, what the hell's going on here?" So he confronts all of them and he's like, "Listen, this is my house. You need to stop doing this." But he's still being calm about it. He's not freaking out like, "Oh, you people are in my house. What are you all doing here? Why are you all crazy? You just murdered somebody." He's not freaking out. He's still calm. So it's still strange. So then they pick this boy up and they're like, "Okay, we're going to take him to the hospital." Now, at this point, this movie gets really weird, because when they go outside, there are no cars. There's nothing. There's just grass and a house. So when you look at it from the representation of, this house is the only thing that exists. This is the Garden of Eden. The house represents the world, right? The house is only confined to that world. The world that we live in, which is a big thing, where we have different countries, different states, different nationalities, all of that that we exist in is confined to this one house, which is freaking fantastic. I love that. And so it's like, because that's why we don't see any cars, we don't see any animals, we don't see any buildings. When they leave, they just disappear. They just disappear. And I'm like, it's kind of weird. So then she goes back into the house. And then you fast forward a little bit, Javier Bardem shows up and he's like, "I got to ride with the police." And I thought that was a bit weird, because I was like, I didn't see any police cars or anything. So you're like, there's no via, how do you get here? So he shows up and they talk. And then, Ed Harris and them are all gone. And then I can't remember if this is the scene where they argue or not. I don't remember. But I think what happens is, I don't know, because there's a scene in the movie where Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence, they're arguing, and she's like, "Oh, you won't fuck me anymore, and you can't write, and all this." And then I love the Javier Bardem's performance in this movie. It's just the subtle things, man. They don't spell it out for you. It's just subtle stuff. I love that in my movies where it makes you think, and it's like, huh, you look at the person's facial expression and their body language and their eye contact and their heavily breathing. Because there's a scene where Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem are arguing, and she's like, "You won't fuck me anymore. You can't write," and all this. And as soon as she looks at him in the eye and says, "Well, you can't write, and you haven't written anything in a long time," he gulps. He like he kind of chokes up a little bit. You see it, you hear it when it's like she says that, and he chokes up a little bit. Where that effect that hurt him, in his heart. And he's like, okay. So then they have sex. They have sex and all this stuff. And then she rolls over and she's like, "Oh, I'm pregnant." And at that moment, I was like, "How do you know that you're pregnant? You're weird." But she's like, "No, I'm pregnant. I just know." It's like, mother's intuition. Your moms know things from a mile away. So it's mother's intuition. And Javier Bardem believes her. And it's at that moment where it's like, Eureka! I know what I want to write about now. So then he rushes in his study and he starts writing. And, Jennifer Lawrence is really happy for him that she's motivated him. And he's finally finished his book, whatever it's about, which I think it's about this actual story. So it's like, whatever happens in this movie is the stuff that he wrote in his book. It's going exactly the way he wrote it. And so it's like, he writes it, and then Jennifer Lawrence wants him to finish it. He finishes it. She reads it. And what you see is a vision of hers where it's like just him and mother and the holy matrimony. The grass grows. The world is perfect. Everything is calm and at ease, and there's no interference from the outside people. There's just him and her. So it's perfect. Paradise. But not quite. Now shit gets even weirder. So now you got, like I said, I don't know if this is before or after the pregnancy thing, but you got Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer return. They come into the house, and then they start, they're mourning their son. I think this is before that. Yeah, this is the whole pregnancy thing with the baby. That's before that. So it's like the family comes in and they start mourning, and all these people are covering up the house. They're all mourning, and they're like grieving and all this stuff. And Javier Bardem's like, "Oh, we have to be there for him. They have nowhere else to go." And in my mind, I'm thinking, hey, dude, it's like, tell them to go to a motel. Tell them to, like, hey, man, take that to a funeral home. Take that to a church. Take these people and put them in a hotel or something. And apparently he has money. Javier Bardem, you look, from a realistic standpoint, you look at Javier Bardem's house. It's a beautiful house. If I had money, I would totally live in that house because it's isolated. It's isolated from the outside world. I want to live in the woods someday, in a cabin with a dog and my wife, and it'd be fantastic. And so it's like, he obviously, from a realistic standpoint, Javier Bardem has money. He's an author. He's a writer. He can afford to live in this really nice big house. He has money. So if you really care about these people so much, and you really love your wife, and you really are like, yeah, this is really stressing you out. I want you to be safe, and I want to take care of you. We just had these two people act a fool, and one brother killed the other one, and I don't want you to be exposed to that. Hey, I want to help these people, and I want you to be safe. So I got money. I'll pay for all these people to go to a hotel and mourn there, or go to a church and mourn there, or whatever. I wouldn't bring them back to my house. So this is getting really weird. So then it's like, Michelle Pfeiffer still being a bitch to Jennifer Lawrence, telling her, "Oh yeah, you're inappropriately dressed for this whole ceremony or whatever, us mourning and stuff." And it's like, fuck you. Like, people cut people down so much in this world, it's ridiculous. Like, people put themselves in a high pedestal and say, "I'm better than you," and cut the other person down and say, "Oh yeah, you're half, you're not even what I am," and all this. This is really, really ridiculous. So she does this to her. And then when Michelle Pfeiffer says that to Jennifer Lawrence immediately looks down at her chest, and the camera is like right in her cleavage, which is just bizarre. So when I saw that, I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit, like, that's a little excessive. You didn't need to show that. But when you think about it, it's like, well, we're seeing everything from mother's perspective. and we're feeling how she's feeling. So when she looks down at her chest, it does feel like, oh, that's unnecessary. You didn't need that shot in there showing her cleavage. But then you look in there and she covers herself up immediately, and it's like, okay, I can let that slide. I understand. So it's a little nitpick, but then you got the story moving on a little bit, and then this whole they're mourning and all this stuff, and then a whole bunch of other people show up. There's more people and drones show up, and they're just like, and he's already finished his book by this point. He's already finished writing his book, and there are a bunch of people who just show up, and they're just like, well, actually, I think before that, okay, the family mourns and they leave, I think. And then later on in the story, you got some people showing up like, oh, you're my favorite author. Now, at this point, like I said, the movie doesn't exactly point out what he writes about. So when you think about it from like a Bible standpoint, a lot of people worship God. There are followers out there who believe in God and or a higher power or something like that. And so you got all these people who are obsessed with this author, Javier Bardem, and they're just like, I'm following you. You're the greatest writer and all this stuff. And that's how some people view the Bible. They look at it and it's like, this is the book of all books. This is what changes the world, And so you look at Javier Bardem's character as God, the creator. He's an author. He creates things. Not only I feel that there's an interpretation of like, yeah, everything that happens in this movie within the story is his creation. He's created all this. Everything he's wrote about is what's happening, right? Except for the vision that Jennifer Lawrence saw when she read the final page. That's not coming to fruition. But it's like he created this world that they live in. And all these people are his followers. He created all of them. And now they're just really acting crazy, being like really, they're like, like religious fanatics who are just like super crazed and obsessed over it. And they just want to pound it into your skull. And they're just like, they come in drones and they worship, and they just really crazed fanatics. They're just really crazed about it, and they want to meet him, and they're super obsessed with it. So they come to the house in drones, and he's like, I want to be idolized. He's being really nice, but he's also kind of a dick at the same time, because then he's like, his wife is pregnant and she's just like, got to get these people to leave. I'm pregnant. I just want to be alone with you. And he's just like, hey, these are my people. I want to take care of them. We should be nice. We should all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, you're right. But for crying out loud, dude, like this is way too many people. But they're all outside. So it's like, okay, it's fine. They're outside. They're not in the house. It's all good for the time being. So then they start coming into the house unexpectedly. And this is when she has her panic attack again. And so there's a scene where she goes to the bathroom and she's about to drink the paint, which is the potion or whatever that calms her down. Because now her house in this point is being poisoned again, her world. So that's what it's affecting her heart. So then she tries to drink it, but then some intruder comes into the bathroom. And it's kind of funny. This is a point of the movie that's kind of funny, because then this dude comes in the bathroom. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then she's like, what are you doing in here? And then she doesn't drink her potion. She forgets about it. So this is where stuff really gets weird and starts to escalate. So then she's walking around her house. There's a whole line for people to go to the bathroom, which is absurd. It's crazy. If this was my house, I would have called the police. I would have just left. I was telling her at that point, okay, obviously they have a phone. She can call 911, tell these people to leave. Or she can just pack her bags and get the fuck out of there. Like, this is really getting out of hand right now. And Javier Bardem's not listening, so fuck him. Just leave his ass. So then she's walking around the house. There's this line of people waiting for the bathroom. There's this black dude who's really just like an asshole, to where they're like painting her wall. And like, oh, we just wanted to help out. We just wanted to paint. She's like, what are you doing? Stop painting the wall. And then, like, there's a moment where she goes to call the police. She picks up her phone. She dials 911. She's calling. Then some lady comes over and rips the phone out of the wall. And they take all this stuff. And it's just absurd. And I was just like, at that point in the movie, I was just like, what the fuck? And then you got just a drone of people coming in. And they're tearing out stuff. They're tearing stuff out of the wall. I was laughing. I was kind of laughing really hard when I first saw this, because it's so, like, just what, it's bonkers. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? And then she's like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm ready to leave. So she packs her bag. She's going down the stairs. And then Kristen Wiig shows up. I did not expect to see her in this movie. She's a really good actress. I love her in Bridesmaid. She's a good actress, but this is a cameo, fantastic. She shows up, and I laughed when I first saw her face. It's like, oh, it's Kristen Wiig. So then she shows up, and like she's Harvey Bardem's publicist or whatever, and then Jennifer Lawrence is trying to get away, but then she's like, oh, come here or whatever. And I guess they try to interview Harvey Bardem, all this stuff. It's just really absurd and it's really hilarious for the time being. So then Jennifer Lawrence tries to leave, but then now all of a sudden you have the police showing up, and then Harvey Bardem shows up. They attack the police attack Jennifer Lawrence. Harvey Bardem tries to protect her, and the police pepper spray his face. Now there's just a full blown riot going on in the house, which the house represents the world. So you can look at it as like, this is extreme, this is absurd, this is unnecessary. But then when you look at the real world, this is what happens. You look at the house as Earth itself. Nothing else exists. There's no other place but this one isolated place. So when you look at it like that, it's like, okay, this makes sense. This is a story being told about the existence of humanity from the beginning to the end, from the beginning of time till the end of time. And there's so much that goes on in the world that is excessive and is overboard and over the top. Like when you really think about the world, which is kind of depressing to think about, there are really extreme bad things out there. Like there are riots, people riot, people kill each other, people do all sorts of. It has this whole look on marriage and everything, and with the couple and how he's kind of like possessive of her and poisoning her heart and hurting her emotionally, and they're destroying the world that she lives in. So it's a realistic standpoint on humanity's existence from the beginning of time till the end of time, and how there's just so much crap that goes on that we're poisoning the earth, which is the house, poisoning it, and we're destroying it, and we're just so ignorant that we don't know what we're doing. We just keep doing it excessively. So I thought it made perfect sense. At first, when I saw it, I was like, this is crazy. But it makes sense when you really think about it in the movie's context of what they're doing here. And so this happens, and then like there are people being held hostage and captive in this cage. Then Kristen Wiig shows up and shoots these people in the head on the ground. It's just really like violent, and you're just like, what in the world? And then it's like there's an explosion, and then Kristen Wiig gets blown up. Then these military people show up, and now it's like a full-blown war. And then like, this soldier's trying to save her, and then he gets shot in the face. And then it's like Harvey Bardem finally shows up after not being there for so long. He shows up and he's like, I'm gonna save you. He takes her, and all these people are crazy and just like just reaching up trying to like grab her. And then like there are some followers who seem like nice people where they save them. He kicks down his study room, his office that was boarded up. They go in there, and at this point I felt like, okay, yeah, even though all of this, the house represents the earth, and all this chaos represents what goes on in the world throughout time, it's like also the height of her emotion, to where it's like when she just feels small moments of panic to where they're poisoning her world, the house which represents earth, it's just a small panic attack, right? And she takes the paint, she drinks the house. And then towards the end, where everything is escalated and at the point of just like absurdity, it's like her emotion is at its peak now. It's like not really it's at its peak. And she just screams out violently, and it's just like, she's giving birth, which is like, most mothers, from what I understand, when they're pregnant and they're in labor, they're in pain for like hours on end. Like as a man, I can only imagine that pain. But like when a woman's pregnant in the hospital and they're giving birth, it's a painful experience. And on top of that, you got all these people surrounding your house. She wasn't able to drink the paint of the house. So now she's having the panic with her heart and the baby and the people, and it's just a really heightened situation. So I thought all that coming together was perfectly executed. I loved it when I really thought about it. It's not excessive. It's absolutely necessary because you're dealing with her emotion, and this is how she feels, right? And this is what's going on with her emotionally. Like she's feeling this way. Like I'm just at the peak now, So then she gives birth to this beautiful baby. And, the baby smiles at her and it laughs, and it's a cute baby. And then she births the baby. But then Harvey Bardem's like, let me see my baby. And you know for a fact that this dude, up to this point, he has done nothing to reason with his wife, protect her, or anything. So of course you're not gonna give him the baby. I was like, yeah, don't give him that baby. He's a nutcase, man. You should have just left this guy already. And so she's like, you're not seeing my baby. And I was like, right on, girl. Don't let him see the baby. So he doesn't get to see the baby. But then it's kind of funny again because then it's like he's just sitting there like this, like he's just waiting. He's just waiting for her to fall asleep. He has all the patience in the world. He's just gonna wait till she passes out. And eventually she has to. So she passes out, and you're just like, oh, shit's about to hit the fan. You don't know what's gonna happen, but something not good. So she wakes up, her Riverdam has the baby, he's walking away, and she's like, give me back my baby. And she chases him down, turns him around, baby's gone. Now, this is a scene in the movie where it's really horrific. And if you, like they say, if you do love children, you will not like this scene. You just won't like this movie at all. And I believe this is the scene that upset a lot of people. And I understand that. Like, we don't want to see anything bad happen to children. I love kids. I don't want to see anything bad happen to children. But then you just look at something that came out recently, It, where there's a kid who gets his arm ripped off in that movie. You know, where kids are being attacked in that movie. I thought that movie was good, not because the kids are getting attacked, just the story that it's telling and the bondship between friends and how you become friends and how you perform unity with each other to fight off your worst fears with that. So that made sense. And with this, it's like people say the baby scene in this movie is unnecessary, it's excessive, and it didn't need to be in the film. Maybe it didn't need to be in the film. I don't know. I think, like, when I first saw the movie and the scene where Jennifer Lawrence gave birth to the baby, I thought the movie was going to end there. I thought this movie was just going to be, because at first, because I thought this movie was going to go in multiple directions. At first, I thought, okay, this is a cult. Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer are lying. Javier Bardem's in on it. It's like Rosemary's Baby. That at the end of the movie, they reveal that they're a part of a cult, kind of like House of the Devil, where it's like they're a cult and they worship the devil, whoever, and they're going to get her pregnant as the devil's baby, and that's what I thought this was going to be. But then once the kids show up, I thought, okay, no, that's not the point. It's a straightforward movie where Ed Harris is dying, and he wants to see his greatest author that he loves, and his kids show up, and they act a fool, and it's just a straightforward movie, and there's nothing really mysterious, or no one's against each other. There's no plotting or anything. It's just a straightforward movie. But then when it gets even more weirder, then I'm like, okay, it's not that. Now it's something else. What's going on here? And then I'm thinking, okay, this is a movie that is a representation of motherhood, where it's like, you know, when most mothers, I think, when they're pregnant, it's a roller coaster ride. It's like, okay, yeah, you know, a mother's pregnant, they're going through childbirth. Their emotions are heightened, kind of like, you know, when a woman's on her period, and for most women, when they're on their period, they kind of become more aggressive and angry and frustrated because they're in pain. And so being a mother, from what I understand, is like when they're pregnant, their emotions are heightened and stuff like that, so they can easily snap on you because they're in pain for like these months on end. So from the movie standpoint, I looked at it as, okay, it's a mother's growing pains, to where it's like, yeah, she's going through all this stuff, and all the stuff that's happening in the house is a representation of how she feels. Like, it's overwhelming now. And so when she gave birth to the child, I was like, okay, that's what this is about then. And it's going to end with her giving birth to the child, and the baby's healthy, and they're locked in the room. And it just ends right there, because I thought it was going to end right there. And I would have been happy if it ended right there. I would have gave this movie a solid A or an A minus. I was like, okay, that was cool. But it didn't stop there. So it gets even more just extreme with the baby scene, which I know a lot of people hate. So the baby's being like, it's like at a concert when people, you know, they're I don't know what the word is, but it's like, you know, people are being passed around in a concert and stuff. Well, they're passing around this newborn baby, which is really delicate. Newborn babies are extremely delicate. But you got these fanatics who are passing this baby around, and it's a really, like, I saw the scene and my jaw was dropped, my eyes were wide open. I was just like, what the fuck? And then so the baby's neck snaps, and it's like horrific, because then I cannot get that image out of my mind. I keep thinking about it, and so you see the baby being passed around, and then, like, as they're passing the baby around, it's crying, and then it starts peeing on everybody, and then the neck snaps. I'm just like, that's really, really disturbing. It's really disturbing. And then she sees the baby, and then you see its like mutilated body and its corpse, and it's just like this you sick bastard, you know. And then like they start eating the baby and stuff. And so when I think about it and what it represents, a lot of people say it represents Jesus Christ. And I'm thinking, okay, if this is a story about humanity from the beginning of time to the end of time, which in my initial review I called this an embellished vision. This is not an order. This is not like, I don't know exactly how, when they say the world first started with, I guess, Adam and Eve, and then that went to shit, and then you got the dinosaurs, and then that went to shit, and then you got humanity. I don't know where it first started. They say we came from monkeys, which I don't believe that. You got evolution. People believe in evolution. Some people believe in the Bible. Me personally, I don't know the real reality of the world and where it first started and to where it got to right now. But it's like in the movie, it represents, okay, you got the first showing of man, Ed Harris, and then woman came from man, Michelle Pfeiffer. You got the creator, Javier Bardem, which is God. He's also a writer. He wrote the Bible. He's the creator of this world. Mother Earth is Jennifer Lawrence. The world, the house represents the world, and it's her. It's a part of her. He created it, but she is the owner of it. It's hers. And so every time people come into her world poisoning it, hurts her heart. And then you got all these other people showing up, which are followers and stuff, and people that he created in his image, and they show up and they just poison the earth. They continuously do things that are like extreme. And so with the story of Jesus, it's like, yeah, you got Jesus who they say he walked with the sinners. They say he died for all of our sins and stuff. And so you have human beings, which God created, killing his son. They say God gave his only begotten, his son, to save everyone. And in the movie, I don't think it's 100% like that, but it is kind of like that. So it's like they kill the baby in the movie, which represents Jesus, and they eat the flesh of Jesus, which in real life, people eat bread and drink wine. Wine is the blood, and bread is the flesh. And so with the baby, they literally eat the baby and drink its blood and all this stuff. So that represents Jesus in a way. And then Jennifer Lawrence is at that point, she's just like super extreme. And you can also look at it from a standpoint of like motherhood, to where it's like, I know for a fact that it is really hard losing a child. Like, yeah, your child can grow up and move out of state and you don't see him for years. That's heartbreaking. But then when you like lose a child, like they're dead, that is the most heartbreaking thing a mother can ever go through. So seeing it from that perspective, it also makes sense, where it's just like the movie's called Mother, and it deals with Mother Earth and motherhood at the same time. And so it's like it goes through all the loops of that, where it's like she has the baby, she loves the baby, she cherishes the baby, she doesn't trust the husband's a fuck up, but he fucks it up obviously, and the child dies. Now she has to go through that turmoil. Yeah, so then you look at Jennifer Lawrence's character, her baby's dead. Now at this point, this is when the earth, they've completely poisoned her world. She's fed up. When she puts her hand on the ground, she feels the heartbeat of the house again, but this time it turns black. It turns black and it stops beating. And then she just violently screams. Then the house starts to erupt, and that's when her tension was at its peak. Now it's went through the roof. Now her tension, her emotions are through the roof now. She's had enough of this. She finally takes charge. She starts cutting up people and stabbing people. And of course someone would do that. You just murdered her baby. Of course, you want to kill someone. So she starts stabbing these people. And like I said, the baby scene is excessive and it may be unnecessary. And the whole Jesus thing may be like, yeah, you just threw that in there for like shock value or whatever. But then when you look at it from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective of her character progression, from the beginning, she's not very brave or bold, like, yeah, she'll stand up to Javier Bardem and say these people need to leave, but she doesn't really do anything about it. Like when they're having sex in her house, she doesn't do anything about it. When all these absurd people come in, and she doesn't really do anything about it. And it's at this point to where she finally says, you know what, enough is enough. I'm taking charge of this. I'm tired of this relationship. I'm tired of these people in here. They're destroying my world. This has got to end and stop right now. So that alone is enough for that baby scene to take place, to where it's a character arc for her, to where she's finally going to take charge. She's reached the end of her rope, and that is it. So then they start beating her up at first because they fear what they don't understand. And so it's like that to me was another representation of humanity and how crazy humanity in the world can be and how judgmental it can be. So they're beating the shit out of Jennifer Lawrence. It's horrific. And then I think Harvey Bardem comes in. He's like, you need to forgive them. And he's still being so nice after all of that. And it's like, dude, what does your wife have to go through? What has to happen for you to say, like, to wake up and be like, listen, this is enough? And he's like, we need to forgive them. And it's like, okay, whatever. And she's done. So then she's like, there's a scene earlier in the movie where there's this lighter that Ed Harris has when he smokes. So Ed Harris's smoking also comes into play with this as well. So I feel like everything in this movie is perfectly structured to where it's like there's a conclusion with it. It's not like, ooh, here's something, there's no answer to it, and it's not reflected in the end. Everything here connects to each other. Everything that a person does in this movie is connected to something else. And that's why I love this movie so much, because it makes you think like that. And everything is perfectly tied up in a nice bow. So it's like Ed Harris' character smokes throughout the movie. At first you're like, oh, he just smokes and he's coughing, whatever. But there's a scene where there's a lighter on the table after the scene where she sees, the rib exposed and then he's in the bathroom choking. There's a lighter on the table, and then she just kind of like throws a lighter on the ground. Now, at first, when I saw that scene, I was like, okay, what the fuck is the point of that? That shit is stupid. Like, when I saw it the first time, that's what I said. And then you see the end of the movie where she just takes the lighter that she threw on the ground while she's getting beat up. She looks down, sees the lighter that no one ever found because she just threw it on the ground. She grabs it, and that's what she uses to burn the world down. So that God, the creator, Javier Bardem, can start anew again. And so it's like the second time I saw the movie with the lighter, when she sees it and throws it on the ground, it's like two different things. It's like, one, she's upset that this guy's smoking in her house. So it's like kind of like a situation where someone's doing something that you don't like smoking in your house, and you see their lighter and you just do something with their lighter, like you throw it in the trash or throw it outside just to spite them and be like, yeah, I'm going to teach you to be smoking in my house. I'm going to throw your lighter on the ground, something petty like that. So not only that, but also it comes into play at the end of the movie when she's reached the end of her rope. She finds the lighter, she goes down in the boiler room, and she looks at Javier Bardem, and he's like pleading to her, like, I can't remember what he says, but he's like, I love you or whatever, don't do this. And then she reveals to him, like, hey, I've loved you for this long. We've been together, but you've treated me like crap. I'm fed up with this. I've had enough. Too late. Boom, sets the house on fire. Everyone's dead. The house, the world is blown up. And so for me, when I think about that, that represents the apocalypse, to where people are like, okay, when you think about Mother Earth as like a living, breathing thing, it's like the more we poison it, the more it's going to fight back. Everything that exists on Earth, like trees, people cut them down. That's stuff that's naturally coming from the earth, and human beings corrupt something that is natural law. Human beings modify stuff to their liking and take things and corrupt it and switch it around and change it. And when it's like, that's not how it originally was. So that's what was happening in this movie with Jennifer Lawrence's world, which was the house. And then so she just destroys everything. It's like the apocalypse. She's like, burns everything down in fire. It's really symbolic. Everyone's dead. It's the end of the world. Then you got Javier Bardem. He's not dead because he's the creator of all this. He's like a god, I guess, or whatever. And then he takes her, and she's burnt to her crisp, but she's still alive. Lays her on the table. She's like, I gave you everything, and I can't do it anymore. I have enough. I just want to leave. But he's like, do you still have love in you? And she's like, yeah, it's still in her heart. So then he goes and rips into her chest, which is really like a gruesome scene. He goes into her chest, he pulls out her heart, and then it's the crystal thing again, which I knew that was coming. And then so he puts it back. It's from the end of this movie is the beginning of this movie. The beginning of this movie is the end of this movie. It just goes in a loop. He's continually on this loop. He takes the crystal, he puts it back on the thing, house comes back to life. What you saw at the beginning of the movie happens at the end, and now the end of the movie goes right back to the beginning, but with a different woman who has the same heart. And then he just continuously goes through the cycle. Now, I don't know exactly if the cycle is executed the same way we saw in the movie each time, Different things probably happen throughout. We don't know, but it's something that he's continuously doing, and I guess he keeps trying to perfect it. Like how they say God created the earth, man in his own image, all this stuff, but then man got corrupted and ate the fruit, and now all this chaos happens, and that's why you have people doing horrific and horrible things and all this stuff that goes on in the world. And it's like, they say the apocalypse will come and wipe out the world and all the negative bad stuff, and start anew again, start fresh. And that's what this movie did. It's like she destroyed it, and then he starts fresh and starts anew again. But then what Michelle Pfeiffer said, like I said, she says that, yeah, why don't you just tear it down and build from the ground up again, which is a lesson that the creator in the movie, Robert Bardem, should learn. But yeah, man, thinking about all that, watching this movie, and just hearing other people's opinion, and then me thinking about it and watching the movie multiple times, it totally makes sense. It's a reflection on this world. Yes, it is a bit exaggerated because, yeah, it's not the actual world, because the world is just confined to that one house. And there's a lot going on in the world. And so it's like, there's a lot going on in that house. And I think it made perfect sense. And also, not just how violent the world is, but also the heighten of tension that Jennifer Lawrence feels emotionally and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I absolutely love Mother. I think it's not one of Darren Aronofsky's best movies. I still like Black Swan better than this, because Black Swan is more just like simple and straightforward, whereas with Mother, it's like all over the place, but it all comes together and it makes sense. And that's why I think Mother is one of the best movies of 2017. But for me, I go to the movie to have a movie make me think, entertain me, and make me think about it long after it's over. And so with this, it did all of that. It entertained me. I laughed during certain moments. I was moving around in my seat. My eyes were glued to the screen. Like I said, at first 15 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. And then as it goes, I'm like, there's a mystery. I don't know what's going on here. Then it gets extreme, and I'm moving in my seat, and it's adrenaline pumping. My emotions are rising and going all over the place. And then the baby dies, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And then so like that's why I like this movie so much, because it does a lot for me emotionally, and makes me think, and it entertains me, and it's just a movie that sticks with me. And those are the kind of movies that I like. And so it's like with this, it makes sense. I feel like when people get angry with this movie, it definitely did its job. If it gets an emotion out of you, whether it be positive or negative, the movie did its job. But I do love this movie. I like it. One of the best movies. That's all I gotta say. So as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.